Today's subject is the physicality of attention. And that's a subject that's very dear to me. I went to and received a PhD because that subject was so fascinating to me. And I wondered who else in the world might be looking at that and wondering about it. The physicality of attention, when I say that term, I'm really looking at its very profound relationship with presence. So presence and physical attention, they interweave. They are um, where there is physical attention, presence can articulate. Presence is articulating. If presence is articulating, there's physical attention. So I would like to start there in my conversation with you. This is one of the very few conversations I have engaged with, breaking bread conversations in which I really did a deep dive into my own writing to see how have I addressed this subject in the past. Um, 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 I was curious about it because it is something I say so frequently, and it's so much a part of my work that it's easy to lose track of what has been the work that has happened in the past. Okay, so looking at presence um, requires maybe initially, and I will say this and not get into this, that the body is always a mind and the mind is always a body. And that is true on profoundly um, refined levels and scales, so that the mind is not limited to neurology and our neurological being, but there is uh, forms of mind that exist as physical action, forms of cognition or knowing that exist um, within the physical form. If you dance, if you dance in ways that could be understood as life-threatening, then you understand that um, that there are so many moments of synchronicity that more than cognition, than neurological cognition is happening. The body as a thinking being, and I turn to dance philosopher Maxine Sheets Johnstone always, because one of her contributions is to talk about how is to speak to and address the body that is a thinking body, not in the same sense of cognition, but equivalent to neurological thinking, so that it's different in kind, but not in its significance. So, um, I'm not necessarily interested in saying in getting involved in what it is that is thinking, that is this kind of peripheral, I call it peripheral intelligence, this peripheral um, form, thinking form that we are, but it is the foundation of our It is the foundation of our. Sorry, I just got distracted because Nicholas left and he must be having Wi-Fi issues. Um, it is the foundation of our ability to know the world as physical beings. So, and actually, I would love to review what I said, the setup for that sentence, which I was distracted in the middle of. So, to think peripherally with this intelligence that we always also are is to think um, um, in forms that our neurology does not necessarily turn into words or language or knowing directly. Um, so, Nicholas, you must be having issues getting Wi-Fi, perhaps? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. I might be
No
in and out,
problem.
but we'll try and find a spot.
Come and go as much as you need.
Thank you.
Um, uh, so presence, as it articulates, is articulating the articulation of presence has a physical correlate, and the physical correlate of presence, which of course presence requires, is mm, presence in humans. When it articulates, requires both the body and mind. It is a body, mind, emotion, and the physical correlate of it, of an articulating presence has a great deal to do with the quality of our physical attention. And so here we are with physical attention. First, understand that everything has presence, everything that we can name because it is present to us. We investigate it as a presence, and that investigation is um, becomes partly conceptual. And part of the reason why it becomes conceptual is because we have ideas about everything that we see. So, and particularly around and about presence, we conceive knowing even as we are knowing. Humans work in two ways, and this profoundly influences our physical attention. Perceptually, we know the world perceptually. We also know the world conceptually. So, for instance, if I say to you, um, um, everything you're hearing right now, you're hearing because there is also concurrent to that silence. You're not on a noisy system. There's silence. And so then you conceive and conceptualize silence, even though it is not front and center in your attention. And the concept of silence, of course, is impossible for a human. There is no such thing as silence. If I put you down into the deepest, darkest cave and we do sensory deprivation or a sensory deprivation tank, you're going to be hearing your heartbeat. You're going to be hearing the blood move through your system. There is, for a human being, no such thing as silence. We conceive of silence. We don't get silence experientially. But the magic of being a human is that we're not bound by perception alone. We always are articulating our conceptual knowing. That doesn't mean that we can't, that we don't have more and less noise in the system. There always is. Yes. And less noise means that something is going to, whatever has greater sound will be kind of highlighted for us in our hearing. We will be hearing that thing. If we attend, the skill of being a musician is to be able to hear all those levels and articulate hearing. Are any of you musicians? Right, right. So the ability to listen simply to the oboe within the fullness of a symphonic moment is a skill, a hearing skill, which has the capacity to read through so many other sounds, basically putting them aside to listen to the oboe. Or maybe it's not setting them aside. Maybe it is feeling the oboe in its engagement with all the other um, 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 musical vibrations. The I'm not a musician, so I can't claim to know. I am simply imagining. Um, physical. So back to physical um, attention. And it's right now, it's relationship to presence. Our ability to articulate our presence as dancers. And now I'm thinking about the word presence is difficult because we have the notion of being present in a moment, meditative practices, for example, have something to do with being present in the moment. Dancing, we're continually asking you to be in this moment, present to this moment. It is active. I just said present to. So being present to something means that you are aware of it. Your attention is to some degree trained toward it. Um, and then we also use presence um, as something existing. Something is present. It exists. Um, I am using presence right now as a verb because we're talking about the physicality of attention. And as a verb, we're talking about presencing, the practice of articulating one's presence. So, those of you who have studied with me know that I very often say, what size are you right now? What size are you right now? And that size that you are, meaning how much space are you are aware of? How much space around you are you living as in this moment? Are you simply the flesh in, or are you the size of the room? And it may be that there's somebody in the next room, and your presence is also with them. Mothers do that all the time. There's somewhat here and then somewhat in the next room with a child. Fathers do that too. Um, more and more these days. So, um, yeah, I have to catch myself because, sometimes I live in this old life, times before, keeping current as to what's happening now. That's a practice. Um, the um, So the articulating factors of presence are the body and its tonality. So if we have two people dancing and they are articulating their presence so that they can co-presence a space of being. They can both be the presence of the dance that is dancing them, for example. And that dance that is dancing them is an emergent phenomenon that arises as a result of two people engaged in a relational practice. That relational practice requires knowing, right? They have to know what's happening. So, in order for me to be engaged with my partner, my engagement demands a concurrent reading of what's happening from a perspective which happens to be mine. And I can co-presence a space that they also are. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Okay. Um, I see the top of Gretchen's head wag. I'm
No,
down there, huh?
no, no, I'm
Oh,
writing down stuff. That's why.
okay. I thought your screen might be down on the
No,
table.
no, no.
Okay. So what allows that phenomenon to happen has a great deal to do with how the physical form is being lived, the tones that are present, how we, and that has a great deal to do with our myofascial system. So if we are, uh, if we have conditioned our physicality to engage. Right now, I'm thinking of a tough body that goes to the gym all the time and has a great deal of tonal, um, I want to say pressure or tonal, um, it has high tone. I'm thinking of going to the gym later, and I know I'm going to see that at the gym because that is a particular engagement with the visual body that can lift a great deal of weight, can push against things really well, can pull things, can and has is pumped. If I say pumped, you know what I mean. You mean I mean that it's carrying a great deal of static fluids and chemistry that is that engages muscles so that they're large. And high tone bodies mean the muscle is engaged tonally. So when somebody is training for strength, learning to release becomes a critical to that strength and critical to being able to let go so that you've got greater tonal range from high tone to low tone. If you are practicing an Asian martial art, you probably have been trained to be low tone,
Mm.
to initiate, not kicked up, but kicked down. When you step into a situation of some form of combat, so that you can engage immediately without needing to disengage anything. Correct? And I know, Nicholas, you have martial arts training, no? Do you have martial arts training?
I've been exposed to a little bit of Tai Chi, but no training.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anybody else here have martial arts training? Okay. Well, yeah, and Tai Chi is a perfect example of this because it is training low tones. It is going lower and lower and lower. And what low tones accomplish is the capacity not only to articulate up into high tone in a flash, whereas high tone does not articulate down to low tone quite as fast. And high tone does not go from high tone to, unless you've trained it. If you've trained high tone to low tone, if low tone is where you begin and where you return to, you come out of low tone, you return to low tone, then low tone will be easy for you. But if you practice high tone and you remain in high tone, low tones become less available. The thing about low tone is that it is highly sensitive to environmental pressures and conditions. So that if I'm touching you with low tone, my capacity to engage into, I can add tone to the degree that I can experience your fascial system. And if I'm inside your fascia, then I'm inside you. Your fascial system is a full body system. High tone cannot do that. High tone does not have the listening capacity. High tone listens. High tone acts. Low tone listens. These are very different activities, which is why when I'm training dancers, I'm always suggesting that they discover what I call a high contrast physicality. Be high contrast, rise fully and long, tall, and hang. If you don't need it, don't use it. So when we're moving, when we're wanting to engage in the world, technically, those skills have a great deal to do with the physicality of your attention. In other words, it is part of, not the totality of, but part of physical intelligence that allows you to organize your attention specifically. So it's a skill. Attention requires skill. And physical attention, as with mental attention, requires a great deal of skill. Of course, some of those skills are perceptual skills, the organizing skills, your organizing skills of being able to focus on something that is arising, and that focus may be specific or require a narrowing. It may require a diffusing, an ability to experience many things at one time rather than one thing at a time. And that's on the level of the physical form. That's a touch skill. It may be a visual skill as well, of course. To be able, in contact, we train that skill visually, but it's also a tactile skill. So when I asked you once again, what size are you? I'm asking you a touch question. I'm saying, how much of the space of being are you engaged in touching? Because that engagement determines your spatial presence. Okay. Um, so, man, I can't believe I've only gotten into the beginning of this, and here we are already halfway through. So we started late. I'm going to keep going. So, one of the things where I'm reading from myself something I wrote. The interiority of tones define the quality of agreements that compose the body in its interactions with the world. So agreements. Um, agreements are on the physical level are like a handshake. We come together, aligning, working together. So when muscle systems work together, but if you take it down to even smaller levels, when you activate within your felt form some muscle tissue over other muscle tissue within the same muscle, you're creating agreements. Letting go of your agreements is what allows for lower tones. Does that make sense? So letting yourself fall apart, for instance, on the floor into many, many, many pieces so that you are incapable of movement, that is the lowest of low tones. It's like a child sleeping. You pick them up and they drape, right? Yeah. So that draping, that capacity to drape, really important. Something worth saving and aspiring to, your capacity to drape, because it's such a low tone. On the other hand, please don't drape while doing contact improvisation, except to the degree that it serves the communication between bodies.
So from what you've said, you're proposing that entering into draping would be a gateway into opening up more receptivity and activating some listening. If you're in a high tone state, you could move towards draping to try and activate some listening.
True. This is true. I would say that. Yeah, figuring out how to drape is and furniture is great for that. Other people that might be more problematic, except as I see people draping on each other on the floor, for instance, when they just create these kind of what I would call a mosh pile of bodies draped over one another. Figuring out how to move with the values of that, but without the pressures and the constraints and the constrictions and the what's the word I'm looking for? The um, I'm not finding the right word, but you guys will. The requirement that somebody support you. If you're above the floor at all, you want to be able to articulate your drape, which is going to mean there has to be some action within it. It's not a pure drape as I'm speaking of right now. A pure drape, you start to release and release and release and release and release around your joints. And it's kind of stunning how far you actually can release. And finding the ability to both move and be in a state of release is a Tai Chi skill. To move, to have engagement and disengagement happening within fine tuning, engagement of muscle fibers and disengagement of them at the same time. Anyway, this has everything to do with what can be known and what can be communicated, meaning the quality and dimensions of communication. So if we look at low tone, moving out of low tone into engagement as modalities in our physical communication, our ability to speak with detail across bodies. That ability to articulate with fine tuning is delicious and is immense. What we're speaking about is the availability to for experience, to experience. We're really interested in how much can you experience? Always what comes up when teaching is this concern about being vulnerable. And the ability to articulate into action, to rise into action, is greater from low tones than from high tones, yet low tones do feel more. And we're one to be surprised somehow, a low tone state, the joints are released. And yet we know that in a car accident, it's the guy who's drunk and completely low tone that survives it. Right? I used to fight with my brothers when I was a kid. I had two brothers, one older, one younger, and I was in the middle. And I was the one they liked to fight with. So I would simply go profoundly low tone to where I was floppy. I was draping, and they could not do anything with me. So that was the solution. Probably how it is I understand that state so well. And Nicholas, I see this in your body when you move. I see the lower tones. And I think that's one of the things I really appreciate, because immediately I see that and I go, okay, there's a body that's got more capacity to communicate and to listen. So I can use that word listening with your physical form, listening with that physical attention. Listening is a little bit problematic as a word for me, because hearing maybe is more interesting, actually getting it. What is it that has been listened to? Has it been heard? And what is that path of hearing? The alignment of hearing as a physical form. So that when you are listening to a partner, there's a physicality that you are that is has the capacity to return communication or to be to be responsible, as in Karen Barad's terminology, which is that listening for me means that you are the size of your partner and you have organized your fascia so that you are listening to the ground beneath your partner's feet. You're in your partner's earth. You know what your partner requires. And you are, as your right foot is present to your left foot, you are present to your partner. So these require access skills. And this idea of access, I'm using Alvin Noe's understanding of access. He has a text, The Varieties of Presence, in which he notes the differences in people's access skills. He's very much thinking at that moment in time that he uses that term about the when one brings into presence somebody who is not currently there. So if you were to imagine someone you care about as also being available to you and in the room, then you have access skills. They become accessible to you. The idea of saying, what would so-and-so say? When you're trying to make a decision, what would so-and-so say? You bring, they're present to you the second you've asked that question. The issue with death is an issue of access. I have a good friend just died yesterday, 2 days ago, actually. I found out yesterday. And the suffering I'm doing is partly a suffering of access. So, one of the things, that when we engage with the physicality of attention, that physicality, of course, it is your perceptual being, but the most important of all of it is the tactile being, and that is the least understood and the least cared for. And that's where I am giving all of this kind of generalized idea of presence of the physical body that composes uniquely. And the thing that, when I'm talking about body composition, I'm really talking about the material properties of the body. What can those material properties do? And the thing about being a human being is that our composition can change with a thought. Our physical composition is profoundly detailed. And that's what contact improvisation is about, detailing those compositions. Detailing those materials, rather. Detailing it's not just strength and it's not just release. It's so much more finely tuned than that because there are other ingredients present. And the other ingredients have to do with the mental engagement that is also present in that physicality. Because the body is a mind. And if you can feel the mind as it is present as a body, now you start to have material and compositional controls that are extraordinary. And you can tell we're way beyond, can you do this move? We're way beyond the ability to do particular actions, smooth moves with a partner. Now we're into having to change what our language is because we're speaking and thinking differently. And we're moving differently. So now we have to talk about dancing or moving as your partner because your body is congruent with theirs. It's not, you have kind of subsumed the boundaries. Bodies have internal compositions that within them are boundaries. That's what the fascia does, but it also connects. So the boundary is the connection. And when you're dancing as a partner, the boundary is the connection, and there is it can have this continuity body to body so that communication is instantaneous. And now we're into states of communion. So when we're talking composition, we're not talking about states. Does that make sense? Because the composition controls what you can know. What you can know determines the state. It goes on and on. And it's finely tuned with that, with this mental physical materiality, the material properties rather. So that states and material properties align, but with fine tuning. Okay. And it's so profound to me, such a profound system to me, that I had to go and create the ISSC, the Institute for the Study of Somatic Communication, because I know we have not explored this territory of technicity. This is a territory that leads to levels of physical communication, physical mental communication, attentional communication, really, that we don't yet know, we don't yet understand. And I feel as if I'm just a baby I'm just at the very beginning of understanding that this is territory that needs exploring. Thank you. I sent you an email. So anyway, I'm going to stop because now I've really been going a long time. And that's where I'm going to leave it. And I'd love if you guys have things you want to say or ideas that come up or ways you want to challenge me or whatever. I'm yours. Yay, go for it.
Yeah, very enriching to listen to you present from the circumstances of presence to the details of experiencing presence. So I have two things. In Spanish, presence is defined in two words. There are two verbs: ser and estar. Being in the human being state, and estar in the circumstantial where I find myself right now in this interaction. And I feel like at some point we enter into a philosophical domain where fine-tuning to the intricacies of a conversation with another body lands in the word that you use, that is communion. And in that sense, now we're in the we're given the opportunity to imagine that there are values here that apply differently and also qualitatively to the act of sharing contact improv with another group of bodies, and with the with the presence that is both summoned by the dancer, um, as well as invited by the choreographer in a performative presence. And
Right.
and your very last statements about why you are engaging in this as a baby reminded me, on the performative level, of the experience of seeing Bathsheba perform their Gaga philosophy in the bodies of very well trained um, individuals who have tonality that goes high and low in miraculous ways. And what I remembered is that the communion between the audience and the performer felt hypnotic to me. I felt
Yeah.
in a different state just by
Yeah.
witnessing.
Yeah. 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 Because of course your body mind resonates
Yeah,
physically through the
yeah,
touch of sight. Sight
yeah.
touches, and the touch capacity of sight creates all of that incredible resonance.
And also miraculously transcends what I already expect the theatrical environment to produce in terms of effects, because it becomes profoundly human.
Yeah.
And in that context, I feel like, in another conversation, or you know, uh, I think that when you address today presence, and you helped us understand the different ways of
Yeah.
perceiving how the qualities, you reminded us that our presence, physical, and all of the qualities of our presence are also profoundly political, because the ontological presence of the circumstances and what I bring in to the communion are uh, influenced in a myriad of ways beyond my capacity to filter until I am present. And in that sense, there is a certain political agency in questioning the ontologically, why am I here? What am I achieving here? And often in contact improv, it seems to narrow down to the trees rather than go to the forest, and remind me that simply being in communion with these bodies transcends so many of what we are being programmed to abolish, like putting our phones away and sensing each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Really?
true. It's true, Manuel. That's very true and very nicely said. I noticed Kevin had something he also wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you as well. And well, I got a lot from that, what you just shared. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, Nita, something I was with was the listening. And I love so much every time that I've gotten on here and gotten to just hear you speak and transmit. I notice just how much I get from it and how much so many things you share about just kind of weave into relationships and relational technologies and metaphors that really help me in a lot of other domains. And particularly, I study authentic relating, and I've been in that world quite a bit in the last few years. And I just find so much overlap. They like really weave together the principles of
Mm,
contact improv as a
mm.
physical dimension of relating authentically with another body, and then of course, authentic relating is the more mind and words and energy. but they weave. And so when you were talking about listening, something that comes up in the authentic relating world is like what's behind the listening, or what's like the reason, what's the why, the intention of giving our presence to listening. And so often people in conversation are listening to respond.
Mhm.
They're just waiting for their turn to say the thing that comes through them. And that there's a different quality of listening, as we know, when we're listening to really understand or really sync up with the other person, get their world. And that I loved this weaving as you were talking about on the physical level of like tuning that framework into, how am I being in my body and why am I listening? Or like, what am I listening for? Just for the movement that I'm supposed to do, or attuning to the other body to match where they're at. And then there's another layer that arises of to flow with the energy that's moving through me in relationship to those bodies. And
I
so,
want to, I want to, I want
yeah,
to challenge something you're saying.
yeah, great.
Um, when I ask the question, why am I listening? I have turned my being self into a single being, separate from the one I am present as. I cannot ask that question and be present as. When I am present as my partner, in a contact dance, for example,
Mhm.
I am functioning as a multiple being. In other words, I'm functioning as Nita, say I'm dancing with Nicholas, Nita Nicholas. There's the Nita Nicholas. And so Nicholas's need are mine, just as my left leg's need are my right leg's need. I mean, my right legs, they possess the same need. They are not an independent. They are not functioning in most of what I do as in solely independent beings. They do move separately because I am a multiple being. Um, and so I'm always one and many. And I want to just highlight the fact that the questions you're asking relate specifically to the individual I am, which is to separate me from the dance I'm engaged in the asking of that question. I can't ask the question and do the dance because the question um, throws me out of my flesh, my larger flesh form, into the singular flesh form. With that, what am I wanting to do? That notion, the multiple being, and this is part of it all. We do not have skills of acting as multiple beings. And
Mm,
so when I talk about physical attention, the capacity to function as a multiple being is a capacity. That's a skill.
mm,
And if all of my questions are directed towards the singular being, don't be surprised if I can't practice the multiple. Ooh, I just lost him. And that was Nicholas. Came and went. Yeah, does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, really does. And
It's a challenge.
yeah,
That's what
I
makes it
get so
difficult.
much from this. Yeah, I feel like something I really appreciate about you is doing your best and actually doing a great job in like giving voice to things that are really hard to language in my experience
Yeah,
of
they
dance.
are really
And
hard
like
to
I
language.
feel like you're so good at getting so close to like what it's like to translate the full experience of the embodied dance and presence all and into language, which still is just it doesn't quite do it. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really appreciated the like lacking the skills to act as a multiple being. And for me, that really sparks a deeper level of consciousness, I guess, about everything and how,
Yeah.
like group consciousness or even just the two, two in a dance and yeah, it feels very humbling for me, to remember that. Like, yeah.
Wow, check out this t-shirt that Nicholas is wearing. It looks like the interiority of some of his body being. It's like we're looking right inside. Wild. Okay. Um, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you for that, Kevin. It is hard. It is a difficulty, and I always turn to the dance for as my expertise for any expertise I have. Certainly, and not solely. I mean, I have really done my studying to be able to talk about material properties. I remember the moment that came up, and I had to do all of this study around what material properties actually do and how they are. It was quite wonderful. So,
I mean,
um,
some of what was said a few minutes ago was reminding me that we enter these moments of action in CI where it's really achieving a state, and there's not really, I don't know whether it's a lack of naming, but there's like, oh, we're doing something. It's not necessarily that we're repeating an action, but the use of the word estar was reminding me like, estás feliz, estoy feliz. Um, the state of happiness, a state of emotion. Like we're able to name that state. But then if we look at a human being, we'll say like they're laughing. So they están feliz, or they're walking with a bounce in a step. So we say that they están feliz. And I think that there's states that we get to in CI where is it about the quality of the movement? Is it just that we're sharing an emotional state? We're dancing feliz? Um, or is it something that's not named and it's a new, I guess, mutual attention, shared physicality, mutual attention, a shared beingness within a state. And when that happens, I often feel like I lose track of the like, I'm doing XYZ, and I'm more just in like continuing, continuing, continuing. Oh, that was a little bit towards the edge, a little bit out, back towards continuing. Can I get back to continuing, or is it gone?
hmm, hmm, hmm,
And I'll leave that sort of fragmentary there, but I wanted to
hmm.
throw that word message.
Yeah, interesting. Um, so I think a great deal of my work is to note the state, but go further, go inside that to understand language. I mean, language is so gross in that it has no the it's I have to work very hard to get to the details of it.
And so you're
Um,
just saying, notice like I'm in a state or the state
no,
is
I don't.
happening.
I will notice the state, but go further, noticing what the qualities
Is there
of
bouncing like
state are.
Laban terms or something or
I
emotional
don't
terms or
know. I
like
not
just what it
emotion.
feels like?
No, no. I generally turn toward attention. And I understand that our language to describe the attention that is present within states is without detailing. So I seek the details.
Such
So,
as
for example, um, if I am, um, in a state in which you and I are dancing and we are in communion, I will notice how the flesh, my flesh, um, um, uh, the sense that the space between us is thick. Where there is space, it's thick. And as I travel to meet your physical form, I've already met it. I am moving through the thickness of you that is the space that someone visually would say is between us, but there is no between.
So you start to notice what sort of defines the communion state.
I start to notice all of that. What
Yeah.
is present here? How does it happen that this can be?
And there could be a communion in a sadness or in a están
The
feliz,
emotionality of it, yeah, the
Yeah.
emotionality of it is distraction to me, quite frankly,
okay.
because I have emotions. I am not my emotions. So the emotions are an overlay that, or that can, there may be emotions in my muscle body, muscle form that will be organizing and shaping something. And I might notice that, but my interest is not that in the emotion, because that will take me elsewhere. That will not take me deeper into the body and relationship. That will again send me back into my singular self.
You said language is gross in this context,
It's
and
gross.
I cannot agree more. I would also submit for your consideration, and Nicholas, that when the instinct to name arises, it's also somewhere in us an instinct to map. And
It is.
the interiority, the interior mapping that we are conditioned to achieve is to function as bubbles, as individuals, and not in multiple individuals. Because if we do,
yeah,
then go ahead.
Until there is a state that happens that I'm very, very curious about, in which my thinking mind is available to my partner. So my partner has the capacity to move me physically. And I can be moving before I know I'm moving. And it was their mind that moved me.
Yes.
And that is a really interesting location. And yes, people are mappers. We map. We understand our experience by mapping experience. We map the map of reality. The map is not reality, but all I get is a map. I don't get anything else. There is nothing other than the map. And that's the conundrum we are in, which is maps are composed of pictures, sounds, feelings, tastes, and smells. That's a map. And if only you hear sounds, you see pictures, you smell, no words, you still have been mapping. And that map is the only way you conceivably have of knowing that you're alive and experiencing.
And present.
And present. Yeah.
I speak to you from San Diego, where there's a great deal of research about brain waves, and they just released. I cannot say that I studied it, but there are brain waves that go across the two sides of our brains that that track time and space together. And so in that communion, we we experience interiority in a way that is non-linear and not programmable uh, um, uh, from a single point of view. It has
Yeah.
to be. I mean, here I just have to land in Deborah Hay, um, here now and gone, here now and gone. Yeah, that map was beautiful, but now I'm gone. And what
Right,
is?
exactly.
And what is?
Right, exactly. And now, and now, and now. Yeah. Hey guys, it is quarter after, and this usually only goes one hour, and I think we probably just did an hour. And I love the conversation. It's a great one. Maybe we continue something similar to it next time. I don't know, but thank you so much for showing up. I
Thank
have
you for
loved.
breaking bread.
Yeah, come
Thank
again,
you all.
please. Come again. You set me off. You've got great comments.
Until
Much
again
love.
soon.
Really
Ciao.
enjoyed
Yeah,
this.
take care. Bye.
Nita.
Bye-bye.
Bye.